Hey, what's going on, guys? Rome Gaming here, back with another video. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Hammer of the Ancients Barb, and we're just going to quickly go over some of the skills and how the spec plays. More than anything, we're going to break this out into a couple other videos as well, so we're not going to cover absolutely everything. This video is going to be more based on like the skills and the talents more than anything else. So if you want to see how the spec plays, I have a whole bunch of videos on my channel kind of showcasing how it sort of plays. So we're just going to go over the talents that make this possible. I have changed some things actually, so those previous videos aren't 100% accurate. We have replaced some things like Iron Skin, and we've come in here and we picked up all these different shouts. And the reason we're running shouts in this specific build is because we are running this aspect here. Whenever you cast a shout, I think it's called like the Bold Chieftain aspect. Its active cooldowns reduced by 30%, so we got a really good roll on that. Per nearby enemy up to a maximum of 70%. So this means, this gives us two things. This is so core to have. You pretty much have to have this. And it's going to stink because it's going to be hard to get. It's going to be difficult to get to drop. But to get this, all you have to do is just simply gamble rings at the obol vendor. Just spend all your obols on rings, and eventually it will drop. So what this allows us to do is keep permanent uptime on all of our shouts. Because as you see here, if we read it, whenever you cast a shout skill, its active cooldown is reduced by 30% per nearby enemy up to a max of 70. So the more enemies you have around you, the more CDR that you're getting. Now, on bosses is a different story. You need a couple other things to get more CDR to get permanent uptime on bosses. So something that could help is something like Ancient's Oath. You see we get 23% CDR from this item. There's a couple other items in here that will give you that CDR. But for the most part, as long as you have this aspect, you're going to be able to get enough CDR on your shouts to keep uptime on the buffs that they give. Now, back to the shouts. So why are the shouts so important? They give us two things. They give us energy or fury regeneration, and they also give us damage reduction. So they kind of give us two things within just a couple spells. And if you are running a barb build without shouts, it is very noticeable in the amount of damage that you're taking without running shouts. It's very noticeable in terms of fury generation without shouts. So that's why we run them. For the most part is for resources and for defensive purposes. So I guess since we started with shouts, let's just take a look at them. So first one's Rallying Cry. Rallying Cry increases your movement speed and resource generation. So that's very important. And the nodes that we'll be taking is Enhanced Rallying Cry, so that's going to make us unstoppable, and Tactical Rallying Cry, so it'll generate even more fury for us and additional resource generation. So Rallying Cry is going to be really core for your resources. We'll be running Challenging Shout as well. So this is where some of that damage reduction is going to come in that we were talking about earlier. And we also run War Cry as well. So they all serve a purpose. Basically, Rallying Cry is going to be resources. Challenging Shout's going to be damage reduction. And then Warcry is going to increase the damage that you do. So just like a damage ant. And then Warcry will also grant us Berserking. So let's go ahead and go back to Challenging Shout. We're going to be taking Enhanced Challenging Shout. So more max life. And then we'll be taking Tactical Challenging Shout. You gain 6 fury each time you take damage. Then going over to Warcry, we'll be taking Enhanced Warcry. That's going to give us Berserking, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And then Power Warcry. If at least 6 enemies are nearby when you cast Warcry, your damage bonus is increased by an additional 10%. So these 3 shouts are the foundation of the build. It's going to be night and day running without them. So for example, if you don't have that aspect, you could go into something like Iron Skin. It's going to give you a big barrier. But when Iron Skin is off cooldown, you will notice that you are taking a ton of damage. So kind of wonky. I did that up to like pit level 50, and then things started to get kind of weird. So I started looking to the shout build. Now kind of going into the core of how the spec plays, we can go back up here to Bash and up here to Hammer of the Ancients. So Bash is really important because this is going to allow us to overpower with Hammer of the Ancients. And the reason for that is due to this talent here, Combat Bash. After critically striking 4 times a bash, using a 2-handed weapon, your next core or weapon mastery skill will overpower. So that means you have to hit with Bash 4 times, which is kind of clunky, especially when there's a whole bunch of mobs around you. So what we end up doing to kind of cheese this is on our weapon here, we run bash cleaves for 25% damage. So this means if there's 4 mobs around you, you'll bash, you'll cleave all 4 of them, you'll get 4 stacks of combat bash, and you will instantly be able to overpower your next Hammer of the Ancients. So you're just bashing once, and then you're overpowering, and then you're using that overpower into Hammer of the Ancients. So it's just like a 1-1 combo. You're going back and forth between each of them once. But of course, on bosses, that's not the case. You're going to have to bash 4 times before you Hammer the Ancients to get the overpower through it. But through combat bash and that weapon affix, you're able to kind of cheese it, and you're able to get pretty much guaranteed overpowers on every single Hammer of the Ancients, which makes this build very, very strong. Then for Hammer of the Ancients, we are running Enhanced Hammer of the Ancients. Gain 3% more fear for 5 seconds for each enemy damaged by Hammer of the Ancients, stacking up to 10 times. And then Violent Hammer of the Ancients. After overpowering with Hammer of the Ancients, you deal 40% more damage for 5 seconds. So kind of stacking effects that kind of incentivize you to be pressing Hammer of the Ancients over and over and kind of get these sort of stacking buffs. You'll feel that there is a little bit of ramp with Hammer of the Ancients, and because you have like a lot of modifiers that you're having to kind of build up to get that huge damage amp, and then it's all funneled into more Hammer of the Ancients casts. Okay, so we've covered everything in the top half of the tree. Let's go down to the bottom half. So we're running 3 talents here: Pit Fighter, we're running Slaying Strike, and No Mercy. And these are for the most part just going to be damage amps. So these 3 nodes are going to amp our damage. And then we have the opposite down here right below. We're running Counteroffensive, Irresponsible, and Thick Skin. That's going to give us a little bit more Fortify, more damage reduction. Now, one thing that's really nice about Irresponsible is we're putting 3 points into that, and it says casting a weapon mastery skill fortifies you for 30% of your max life. Well, we're also running Steel Grasp, and we haven't talked about this yet, but this is a weapon mastery skill. So each time we cast that Steel Grasp, we're going to get a whole bunch of charges of it. It's going to be on like a low cooldown. We're getting all these fortifies on ourselves to make us tankier, essentially. So if you do have some flex points in here, like you might not want to go exactly what I'm running on these sort of side nodes. But what you can do is you can also put some more points into defensive stance here if you want. You can put some points into exposed vulnerability as well. And you can also take something like exposed vulnerability if you want to. You can take something like defensive stance. Actually, there is one thing that I did forget. If you do take exposed vulnerability, this is going to give you more damage to vulnerable targets. The way we're applying vulnerable in this build, I apologize, I completely missed this earlier, is through pressure point. So your core and weapon mastery skills have a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. So that's the way we're applying vulnerable. You can also get the temper effect on the ring as well, which gives you a lucky hit chance to apply vulnerable. That's one way a lot of people do it. But pressure points for the most part is how I'm applying vulnerable. 30% chance is pretty high, if you're just spamming Hammer of the Ancients over and over, but it only lasts for 2 seconds. So that's one way we're applying vulnerable. And I believe we can also apply it through one of our legendary nodes. I could be wrong. No, that's on, I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of my Spiritborn. But yeah, so a couple different ways that you can apply vulnerable there. Pretty important. Oh, also, you can also apply vulnerable, I forgot about this one, is through Steel Grasp. So Enhanced Steel Grasp makes enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. So you got a couple different ways that you can do it there. And then Warrior Steel Grasp is going to give us an additional charge. So I want to talk about Steel Grasp for a second because it's very, very important. The way Steel Grasp works is it shoots chains out and it puts all the mobs into, let's just use this little puddle here, for example, into like this little circle in front of you. And this is very important because Hammer of the Ancients has kind of a small hitbox. Even when you increase it, the size of it with tempers, it's still got a pretty small hitbox. So you want to tightly group everything there. Like right in front of you, you want to make it all vulnerable and then just smash it over and over. So very important to run Steel Grasp just for, I guess I could say just for grouping the mobs, but it is a noticeable difference when you're running this build without Steel Grasp. Your pit clears are probably going to take twice as long without Steel Grasp. So it is a damage amp. It doesn't look like a damage amp, but it is a big damage amp just for grouping everything. Not going to help that much on bosses really outside of applying vulnerable. And then what makes Steel Grasp work is this unique here, Ancient's Oath. We kind of talked about this earlier for the CDR on it, but it gives 9 ranks to Steel Grasp, and then Steel Grasp will launch additional chains. Enemies hit by Steel Grasp will take increased damage from you for 5 seconds. So very important that if you are running this build, you do at least want Ancient's Oath. You could probably run it without it, but I got really lucky with this. I just went up to the Opal Vendor, and this was like the third one I got. So I, this is like the third item I got when gambling for two-hand axes. So I got really lucky. I'm not really sure how the build feels without this unique. I would assume it's still possible to run, but it's going to be a little bit more clunky, I would assume. But overall, it shouldn't be that hard to get. Again, just gamble some obols for that. And then down here in the bottom of the tree, we have just some more nodes here that are kind of funneling more damage into your Hammer of the Ancients. Skills using bludgeoning weapons have a chance to stun, so that's going to give us a little crowd control effect. Your overpowers deal more damage. Bludgeoning weapons deal more damage to vulnerable targets. Heavy-handed, while using two-handed weapons, you deal more critical strike damage. So very important. And then for our key passive down here, we're running Unconstrained. So Berserking's damage bonus is increased by 60%. So we haven't really talked about Berserking yet. At least I don't think we have. While below 60% life, you are always Berserk. So that's very important. And you gain a 30% physical damage reduction bonus. So what the heck is Berserking? So you can get Berserking, like we said earlier, from, I think we said Warcry, that grants Berserking. And then also, if we get below 65% life, we will be Berserking. So Berserking, at the very bottom, you can kind of see it grants 25% increased damage and movement speed. This lasts up to 5 seconds. So we have a couple ways that we can always keep Berserking up. So you see right here, while below 65% life, you're always Berserk. So we actually have an aspect that we really want to run. While above 40 Fury, you are Berserk, right? So you're pretty much always able to keep Berserk up either through a shout or just through generally losing some life and gaining Fury, essentially. So between this aspect, through that key passive, and then through our shouts, we're pretty much always able to keep up Berserk to get that big damage amp from it. And then the movement speed is really, really nice as well. Okay, guys, and we're going to run a just very low pit really quick. We're just going to clear it here in a couple minutes to show you the gameplay on it, kind of what it looks like. The downside of this build is it's slow and it's kind of clunky, but it is a powerful build to run. So we're going to be running this 45 here. This character has a ton of work to do in terms of glyphs, in terms of masterworking. He's got like busted items completely. Like this item, the temper has flay duration on it. I wasn't able to use the scroll of restoration on it because I've already done it on that item. So he does have a couple things that are really wonky that really hurts our damage. But we've got him up to like pit 60, I want to say 55 to 60, somewhere in there. So let's kind of show you what it looks like real quick. And you're just kind of constantly just like grasping mobs into your earthquakes that you're making here and your beefed up Hammer of the Ancients. And you'll kind of learn, like, as you play it more and more. I don't know if anybody here's played like COD Zombies or anything, but you're kind of getting everything into sort of a line, and then you're just grappling them all in and just kind of trying to one-shot them. It's very important to get good hooks. If you mess up your hooks, it will hurt your clear time. And yeah, you got to see, like, we're pretty tanky. We're not losing that much health. It is a lower pit, but it's very similar in the 50s range for me right now. We're just grappling mobs in here and just pretty much one-shotting them. I guess we'll just I guess we'll do the boss too, just to show like the damage on bosses, which isn't anything insane to be honest, but it's better than a lot of other builds I've ran before. So you can see those big overpower crits that we end up getting. Is kind of what we're fishing for in this build. We want the overpower crits. It gives us that one-shot potential. And then we just want to spam shouts. And a lot of this power, again, is really funneled into your shouts. So I highly recommend to get that Bold Chieftain's aspect if you're wanting to run something like this. Really, most bar builds require to have that. But yeah, you know, we're doing... Am I on pit 45? I thought I was on 40. I don't know. I've been doing that like all day today. Thinking I'm on one pit tier and doing another. So we're on pit tier 45. So yeah, to get this to T4, like, the build feels good, the Fury generation feels good, the defenses feel good. So at that point, it's just a matter of getting our glyphs high enough and getting our tempers correct. Little things will get us to T4. But you see, it plays pretty fluidly. So kind of group everything behind you. There we go. All right, let's do the Pit Guardian real quick. And you'll notice that the damage will start kind of slow and then it'll kind of start to ramp up over time. That's due to like all these little modifiers that we have going. And there we go. So yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully it helped. Again, we're going to do more videos on this. We're going to break it out. Next video will be gear. Then we'll do a Paragon board video, and then we'll probably just stitch them all together at the end. Not sure if I'll get this guy through Tournament 4 or not. Let's see, we have like 10 days left on the season. I probably could if I wanted to. I don't know if it's going to be worth it, though, at this point. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.